Hello students, welcome to ITLS Academy. So students, today we will be discussing pharmacovigilance in relation to veterinary medicinal products. So as you all know that pharmacovigilance is a process by which information is collected and analyzed to detect and prevent unexpected or unwanted adverse effects following the use of medical products. The scope of veterinary pharmacovigilance is mainly the safety and efficacy in animals and safety in people. The use of the medicines which are used for the treatment of animals, they should also be observed for their short and long term effects on animals and the effect on the environment, because they may affect the ecosystem in one or the other way. And unfortunately, there is an acute lack of information on veterinary pharmacovigilance in India. The Drug Regulatory Authority of India has banned the diclofenac sodium for animal use because of reducing number of vulture population, and also to regulate the use of injection oxytocin for animal use. And as per European Medicine Agency, veterinary pharmacovigilance concerns, it means monitoring, evaluating, and improving the safety of veterinary medicines with particular reference to ADRs. And some recent studies have revealed that ADRs in animals is of major concerns to the health of the animals. And in India, this is still a naive or it is still in its infancy. So there is an urgent need to study in details or get studies done about the veterinary pharmacovigilance. So what exactly is veterinary pharmacovigilance? Veterinary pharmacovigilance is same like pharmacovigilance, but it is related to use of medicine in animals. A veterinary medicinal product can be defined as a product with claims to having a protective, therapeutic, or diagnostic effect, or to alter physiological functions when administered to or applied to an animal. The term applies to therapeutics, biologicals, diagnostics, and modifiers of physiological function. In order to have a common scope, cooperation is critical among authorities to ensure there are common global standards for all veterinary medicinal products, example pharmaceuticals and vaccines, independent of how they are classified regionally. Veterinary medicines in India are regulated by CDSCO in the same way as the medicines for humans are regulated. CDSCO also regulates the veterinary medicines. And as per European Medicine Agency, veterinary pharmacovigilance concerns, as I told you, monitoring, evaluating, and improving the safety of veterinary medicines with particular reference to adverse events in animals and human beings related to the use of these medicines. It also involves the collection of information on adverse events due to off-label use and investigations of the validity of the withdrawal period and of potential environmental problems. The adverse events of therapeutic items on animals got to be assessed in line with international guidelines such as Veterinary International Conference on Harmonization of USA and European Union. There are numerous other nations who are seeing veterinary pharmacovigilance very seriously and are conducting inquiries about to get the recurrence of ATRs among different species of animals. And recent studies have revealed that ADRs in animals is of major concern to the health of animals, and these adverse drug reactions has a direct impact on animals and indirect impact on human beings. This concept of the adverse drug events definition for animals is any side effect, injury, toxicity, or sensitivity reaction, or failure to perform as expected associated with the use of an animal drug, whether or not determined to be attributable to the drug as per Center for Veterinary Medicine, that is US FDA. The Regulatory Authority of India is very active to monitor the safety of medicines. The CDSCO has issued a circular on June 6, 2014 to all state and union territories drug controllers regarding the use of antibiotics for treatment of food producing animals and in animal feed. The mortality rate of animals in India due to lack of veterinary pharmacovigilance is very high as compared to other developed countries. The concept of veterinary pharmacovigilance is relatively novel in India, although many other countries like USA, Canada, Europe, Japan, and China, they have a well established guidelines and systems for veterinary pharmacovigilance, and based on the recommendations of such systems, few drugs have been banned by respective regulatory authorities. And the concept of veterinary pharmacovigilance, as it is novel in India, so in India there has a branch of pharmacovigilance laboratories there for animal feed and food safety that has been established at Madhavaram Milk Colony, Tamil Nadu, Veterinary and Animal Sciences University, Chennai, and it undertakes residue monitoring of veterinary drugs, mycotoxins, pesticides, and GMOs in livestock and products. So, why this international harmonization and standard reporting formats so important? So, as a primary benefit of working to internationally harmonized standard is the alignment of local reporting systems with global pharmacovigilance reporting. Thus, this allows the pooling of data and results in better detection of potential risks. Global alignment is particularly important because the same veterinary medicinal product may be supplied to many countries. Therefore, it is essential to pool and share safety surveillance data on these products both within the country, within the company marketing the product, but also between the countries where it is marketed. Aligning with an internationally harmonized system is more cost effective and it allows for quick implementation rather than developing a unique standalone national system. It makes it easier and faster for authorities to cooperate and even share the workload if they wish. And having one set of international standard improves compliance by removing administrative hurdles, duplication of tasks, and need to reformat the data. And it is important to make efficient use of resources within the competent authorities and the industry. This allows the limited resources available to be focused on activities that contribute to product safety and efficacy rather than on administrative tasks for the benefit of animal health and safety in people. Also, international harmonization promotes global trade and wider availability of the medicines. An international harmonized standard for veterinary pharmacovigilance are provided by VICH and VEDDRA. We will discuss all these abbreviations or the terms used in our next lecture. So let's discuss about the objectives and limitation of veterinary pharmacovigilance. The main objectives of veterinary pharmacovigilance includes identification of rare adverse drug reactions not detected during pre-licensing studies, monitoring of increase in known reactions, identification of risk factors or pre-existing conditions that may promote recations and reboot false positive reactions. The limitations with veterinary pharmacovigilance includes inconsistency in reporting standards, reporter bias, and major underreporting of reactions. This is the proposed flow diagram for veterinary pharmacovigilance program of India, and it depicts the various the stakeholders which are involved in the veterinary pharmacovigilance. A lead role for various stakeholders such as animal research institutes, Indian Veterinary Research Institute, veterinary hospitals, agriculture universities is envisaged for establishing the veterinary pharmacovigilance for the welfare of animals and humanity. And CITESCO plays the prime role in association with technical support of WHO and National Coordination Center for Veterinary Pharmacovigilance Program of India at Indian Pharmacopoeias Commission, that is at Ghaziabad. And there they have a panel of experts which recommends the regulatory decisions on various ADRs in animals due to medicinal products. And they work in coordination with veterinary medical colleges as adverse drug reaction monitoring centers, and we have discussed this about the monitoring centers in details in our first introductory lectures. And they the centers, they are vice versa, they work in coordination with Indian Veterinary Research Institute, which works in collaboration with research institutes involved in veterinary research across India. So they all this all National Coordination Center, veterinary medical colleges, Indian Veterinary Research Institute, and research institutes involved in this research, they all work in a very coordinated manner. And what actually is done is collection of ADR reports related to animal is done, and then the entry of data in the software is done. That data is given, goes to veterinary medical colleges for drug reaction monitoring centers. There they analyze the data, and the data analysis report is sent to the expert panel so that they can give their expert comments or their any suggestions if needed. So in this way, this whole pharmacovigilance program of India goes in a very cohort manner, where all the agencies work in a coordinated manner. Then comes the rules and responsibilities of various multiple stakeholders in veterinary pharmacovigilance. This veterinary pharmacovigilance, it involves the collaboration of multiple stakeholders such as national competent authorities, marketing authorization holders, veterinarians, animal owners, diagnostic labs, academics, etc. And each of these stakeholders, they had a part to play in an efficient and sensitive veterinary pharmacovigilance system. Efficient in a way so that unnecessary costs are minimized for both NCAs and MAHAs, and that it is easy for veterinarians and animal owners to report pharmacovigilance cases. And sensitive so that previously unrecognized risks can be detected, assessed, and appropriate risk mitigation measures can be introduced. Example, if any label change is required, so it can also be done. uh, then let's discuss about the role played by various stakeholders one by one. First, we will discuss about the national competent authority. The NCA has the overall responsibility for developing and implementing appropriate national legislation and additional guidance to ensure the smooth running of a national pharmacovigilance system. Ideally, the NCA should collaborate with other regional NCAs and global bodies through such activities as given in VICH, to share best practice, to apply lessons learned elsewhere to improve the local pharmacovigilance system. The NCAs should work with academics and other bodies to ensure appropriate pharmacovigilance training modules are included in education and continuing education for veterinarians, and if possible other stakeholders such as livestock owners, pharmacists, and veterinary paraprofessionals. They should also work with national veterinary registration bodies to ensure pharmacovigilance responsibilities for veterinarians are embedded in local professional ethics expectations. Then comes the role of marketing authorization holders. So in veterinary pharmacovigilance also, MAHAs plays a very critical role. MAHAs have a legal responsibility to comply with local pharmacovigilance legislation and guidance, and to ensure cases are reported in a timely manner. And MAHA should have a process for recognizing and capturing pharmacovigilance cases in line with local and other third country legislation. Now comes the role of veterinarian. These veterinarian, they play the front line of veterinary pharmacovigilance, and they have an ethical responsibilities to recognize potential pharmacovigilance issues and report them to MAHAs or NCA. Then animal owners, they also play a very important role in veterinary pharmacovigilance. They have an ethical responsibility to report any adverse event to either their veterinarian or NCAs or MAHAs to ensure appropriate advice and treatment for the animal under their care and to support the ongoing monitoring VMPs in the market. Then comes the considerations for the scope of this pharmacovigilance system. So student, it's very important to first define what the pharmacovigilance system aims to achieve and how to resource the necessary system and processes. The ambitions and scope of the system will be dependent on the available resources, and conversely resources must be obtained to match the desired scope. Adequate resources are required to manage the respective pharmacovigilance system within the NCA and MAHA. And resource can take the form of IT or tools or people and allocated budget. Resource requirements will need to reflect the number of anticipated adverse event reports. This will depend upon number of factors including the number, volume and accessibility of the products in the market, the local culture of reporting and previous experience of pharmacovigilance reporting. And the considerations for the scope of the system are required in terms of what products will be in scope. Like a pharmacovigilance system should focus on veterinary medicinal plant as defined in your jurisdiction, including other type of product, and may need additional reporting forms tailored to these and may be best handled using separate systems. What adverse events will be in scope? In addition to adverse reactions in the treated animal or the user, example human exposure, will the scope include other events associated with the use of the product, such as lack of expected efficacy, residue exceeding the established safe limit, environmental issues, and suspected transmission of infectious agents in case of vaccines? Then timing of adverse event reporting should also be consideration of the pharmacovigilance scope. To consider the need for expedited case reports and periodic summary reports. The term seriousness as defined in VICH guidelines can be used to define those adverse events that require expedited reporting. All other events reporting can be done in a periodic report. Both these are are very important. And in nowadays some authorities are moving away from expedited case reports and periodic summaries report in favor of a system where all reports are submitted on the same timeline and there is no periodic reporting. Instead, all reports are entered into a common database, example within 30 days, and the marketing authorization holders must analyze the database periodically for signals and trends. Then comes what reporting format is going to be used. So there is a strong preference and many advantages for both NCAs and companies to use globally aligned reporting formats so that data can be exchanged and shared regionally or globally to improve safety oversight and signal detection while minimizing non-value added administrative burden. Then comes, should a third party reports be included in the scope of pharmacovigilance? So requiring individual adverse event reports from the third countries should be avoided in the first instance and until the local pharmacovigilance system is up and running effectively, because what it can cause is the third party country reporting will lead to submission of many thousands of cases and case updates a year. So what it will cause, it will it will divert the attention from local pharmacovigilance, which should be considered the most important, as the local database may be dominated by third country pharmacovigilance information which may not be locally relevant. And also the large number of third country cases require the setup of more sophisticated pharmacovigilance system than would be initially required for just local country cases to handle this information in a useful way. And for that, significant human and IT resources will be required, which may divert the resources from promoting and building a local culture of pharmacovigilance and provide a poor return on investment in the first instance. Then now let's discuss about the legislation of the pharmacovigilance, uh, pharmacovigilance in case of veterinary. And it is important that an appropriate legal framework exists at a national level to support veterinary pharmacovigilance activities. A legal basis is needed to ensure the regulatory authority has the legal capacity to take and enforce regulatory measures, such as changing the safety warnings or on a product, or suspecting or revoking a marketing authorization. In addition, the legislation should provide legal clarity on the key responsibility of each actor, like regulatory authorities, marketing authorization holders, veterinarians, etc. A key decision is how much detail to include in primary legislation and how much detail to refer to additional secondary guidance. The recommendation is that primary legislation should be kept high level and sufficiently flexible so that it does not need changing as veterinary pharmacovigilance develops within a country. While the necessary details is important, if this is in the primary legislation, it may be restricted at some stage in the future as the veterinary pharmacovigilance system matures. And the details should be described in additional guidelines which are easier to update so that the system can adapt over time to experience and changing conditions. So let's discuss the legislation. So legislation should set out a legal framework that is enforceable at high level. For example, it should define the scope of pharmacovigilance system and refer to additional guidance which may be developed to provide the necessary detail to implement the legislation. And legislation should define NCA responsibility. We have already discussed about the NCA responsibilities, but there are some few other responsibilities like setting up of the pharmacovigilance system and database, have appropriately trained staff, requirement to record cases in the database, requirement to identify risks and undertake risk management activities including appropriate regulatory action, to communicate with MAHAs to promote pharmacovigilance, to conduct inspections of MAHA pharmacovigilance systems as appropriate. Then comes, it should define MAHA responsibilities, including but not limited to the requirement to set up a pharmacovigilance system, have appropriately trained staff, reporting of adverse event cases to the NCA, including expedited notification of urgent issues which impact the benefit risk of a product to the NCA, periodically evaluate aggregated data through PSRs or through a signal detection and management system as appropriate, and designate a pharmacovigilance responsible person. Responsibility for any other bodies who are key part of local pharmacovigilance system should also be identified in legislation, such as a veterinarian, as veterinarian plays the major role as an ethical responsibility holds with the veterinarian. Then comes the guidelines or guidelines provide the additional details necessary to implement and run the pharmacovigilance system. For example, guidelines should refer to the pharmacovigilance legislation as the legal basis. It should provide guidance on NCA activities such as management of adverse event cases, process timelines, receipt and filling procedures, storage and archiving and information exchange. For example, will adverse event cases sent directly to the NCA going to be sent to the MAHA to ensure that MAHA also have a full data set? Is feedback going to provide to reporters? Evaluation of cases, like how are cases to be assessed? Communication with MAHA, timelines, methods and expectations. Investigation of identify issue and subsequent risk management measure just in case there is an ADR, so how we will going to manage that. So this all guidelines should be there. Conducting inspection of MAHA system, then it should provide guidelines for marketing authorization holders, details on the requirement for the MAHA pharmacovigilance system, details on expectation for the MAHA staff, training and frequency of retraining, details on reporting adverse event cases, for example case format, standard terms, pick list, timelines for reporting cases, and if appropriate, details of what is considered an expedited case, it should also be mentioned in the legislature. And as appropriate, details on requirements for analysis of aggregated data such as periodic summary reports of non-expedited cases or signal detection in the company database. And it should also provide guidelines for any other body referred to in the primary legislation. And when drafting a legislative framework and guidelines for pharmacovigilance, it is important to consult stakeholders who must be able to implement and understand the requirements of the companies and vets. This is an important part of raising awareness and obtaining their support, which will facilitate the smooth implementation of the new systems. Then comes the setting up of a pharmacovigilance. How we go about in setting a pharmacovigilance system. The basic approach to be followed is summarized below, like define the intended scope of the system and the resources needed, secure the necessary funding and ongoing funding model, draft the legislative framework, avoid putting details into the legislation, keep details in the implementing guidance notes, plan the pharmacovigilance system within the agency or regulatory authority, define responsibility and who does what, ensure adequate resources are allocated, define responsibility and obligations of the companies, concerned stakeholders like Mahas and veterinarians with the draft plans, requirements and documents, establish necessary documentation and systems including standardized format, terminology and language. Students, that's international all for alignment today's lecture. Thank you so much. In the next lecture we will be discussing in more details about the veterinary pharmacovigilance and the related terminology. Thank you so much.